Hey, EL, I'm Mike Manello from the Nerds of Color. How are you?
I'm very good. Great to meet you.
Great to meet you too. Honored to meet you. I was so excited for this movie because I'm such a huge fan of Samara Weaving and survival horror.
Oh yeah.
There's no one better for it, and you picked honestly the best leading lady for one of the best roles that I've seen her in, and
Wow.
that's all because of you and Simon. Honestly, wonderful, wonderful, fun movie.
Oh,
Um,
thank you so much.
Of of course. So I gotta ask, where did this insane concept come from? It is so ambitious, so well done, so dark, so gruesome, but wonderful. Especially if you're a horror fan. Yeah, how did you and Simon get together and kind of put this together?
Well, we've known each other for 20 years. And you know, we met. I was a journalist for Fangoria magazine. Sorry if my voice goes. And I met him on the set of his first horror movie that he got made. And like, we always talked about making crazy horror movies. I think like the times that we kind of came up in because it was before like the Jordan Peele A24 like Corley like or like French 2000 like it was kind of a time that was a bit more tame at first where a lot of the studio stuff it's like you had your errors that were like ripoffs of Scream, you had your errors that were like ripoffs of The Ring, and like everything felt very buttoned up and safe. So I think that there was a part of us that always had this feeling of like, how do we push the genre into like a crazy place? And it's like, and I think that that's been reflected in his work and hopefully in mine. And like, this was a time that I think we were particularly stressed out by, running up against walls in the Hollywood system where it's like we couldn't get the crazier stuff made. They were pushing us to do movies that felt like pretty mid and boring and safe. And I think this was kind of like, we were like, okay, so we should stop trying to play the game. We should write something that like we want to see. And, we challenge each other to write a script. And Simon wrote the script that was like 68 pages. It was, absolutely bonkers. And it was just nonstop. And it was like a world that I didn't recognize, but I still understood in some way. And it was like really earthy. And like, yeah, the fact of like something about this like survival experience. So even if the world doesn't always make sense, you're always engaged on this survival adventure. And like that's a genre that I really like. They don't make a lot of new ones. And I've seen every other survival horror movie that's ever been made. So it's kind of like there was an excitement in trying to contribute to that genre because I was just like, there's not enough of these fucking things. So when he wrote that, at first he was going to direct it. He tried to get it set up here and there, but a lot of people were like, this thing's too crazy. It's too dark. It's too violent. And then 8 years later, our friend Dan Kagan's producer was like, guys, like the world's changed a bit. You should we should try to take it out. And we did. And people were like, yeah, we'll let you make this movie. C2, the company that made Long Legs with Dan. And it just felt like such an opportunity to me where I was just like, man, like this has everything that I love about horror. It has the folk horror stuff, it has the mystery, it has action scenes, it has survival, there's monsters, there's gore. And I'm like, this is just the teenager in me like getting to run loose. It's like it almost felt like getting a graphic novel from like another era, another country that's not translated, and you like open it up and you're like, I don't completely understand what's going on, but this is dope. Like that's kind of the thing that I really, was drawn to.
I mean, here's the thing about this movie that I just loved. It's very difficult sometimes to convey what's going on with a character, sometimes without dialogue, but you guys managed to pull off a world. You build a world without the use of dialogue. Very sparing, anyways. There's of course, one little twist in the movie, but apart from that twist, the entire thing is just very much like a silent movie.
Yeah.
It reminded me a lot of like for example, Buffy's Hush episode, where
Great
nobody's
episode.
talking. Yeah, it's a great episode. But you guys up the ante on that significantly because you're building this world that we don't know around it. You're building this idea of religious fanaticism as well around it. And that takes incredible direction. So for you as the director, can you talk about the challenges really of doing essentially a silent movie? You don't even have captions or anything like that, but just trying to convey and translate everything that's going on with this world and these characters without dialogue at all.
Yeah, it's really it is a challenge. Like the whole thing is a monstrous challenge. It like I think, when you do a story where everything can stop and the camera can sit still and characters can just talk, that does a lot of like heavy lifting in terms of people knowing why they're supposed to care, knowing what to focus on, with a performance. There's like a history of like your emotions, like in your words kind of working together to create this feeling. You're listening to what they say. So we didn't have any of those tools. But, what I felt like we did have is there's the essentials of survival, there's the essentials of fear, there's the communication of love, anger, and that stuff to me is very strong primary colors where it's like as long as you're like really focusing on making sure that that stuff comes across, it really is a roadmap. And then, on the rest of the side, it's like we had an amazing stunt coordinator, Stanimir Stamatov, who understood the assignment where, you know, some action movies, an action scene just happens and it's kind of perfunctory, but it's like the action scenes in this movie are the scenes, they are the drama. The experience of the movie is the action. So it needs to be very specific, it needs to be very character driven, it needs to be very subjective. So working with him, we tried to make sure that we didn't waste a single one of them. Every single one of them showed her development as a character and the emotional state that she was in during the movie. And they needed to really pop. So that was a huge focus, making sure that the gore spoke to the audience. That was a huge focus. The violence needed to have a conversation with the audience. And then getting actors that were like really interesting. It's like, Samara, obviously, she's so expressive. She can bring so much to the table. You can relate to what she's going through. You believe that she's afraid, but she can also be the audience too, where she lets you in on it a little bit, where she's like, what the fuck is this? And that I think that was really, amazing to have her involved with that. And then populating the film of like other characters played by actors that usually wouldn't be in this kind of movie with like monsters ripping people's heads off, like getting people from like weird, prestigious, like can Euro art films and stuff. So you're getting people that have really unique vibes and skill sets all contributing to this like experience. And yeah, everything was very fucking hard for sure. But it was also like an interesting challenge, and you don't always get those, things like get those opportunities.
Absolutely. And honestly, I must give mad props to Samara. She's one of the most underrated actresses working today. With her eyes, she tells a story, she tells everything that's going on, and I just love her to death. And you guys put her through the ringer in this one. She's swinging upside down, she's being buried alive. It's phenomenal, and she does phenomenal work.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
yes, I loved her so much in this. She's brilliant.
She's
Um,
fantastic.
Absolutely. If I can ask, some of the best horror out there usually has a subtext about the real world that we're talking about, a message and a theme, a commentary, if you will, like Dawn of the Dead and consumerism, for example. Um, Especially with dystopian movies. I think that there's opportunity for a huge message, and I think that there's one definitely somewhere within Azrael, especially when it comes to themes of religious fanaticism and at a time that we need it, where things are crazy. So, my question to you is, as the director of this movie, if you want folks to take away one key message or one key theme from this film, from Azrael, what would you want them to touch on or to understand after seeing this movie?
Yeah. I think that, you know, to me, religion can often be a pretty big offender and, what I call like the never ending, unbreakable cycle of violence that we, humans inflict on each other for reasons that feel justified. But, people tend to do it for other reasons too. We tend to do it because we've been hurt in the past, or like this is our home, this is our land, and now we got to fight back and we got to do this, this action against you, and this like constantly escalating, back and forth that never seems to end and kind of traps our planet in what feels like a never ending apocalypse right now. before there's any sort of like biblical gigantic reckoning, it feels like we're living in it. You look at the news and it just feels like the apocalypse. So my feeling is that you watch Azrael's journey and you see all the people around her make their, choices that contribute to this destructive world. You kind of see where she goes ultimately. You go like, it kind of takes a village to keep the apocalypse going.
I just gotta say, commend you. Bravo. This is just a terrific movie. It is an insane, twisted, fucking dark ass movie. And that is what you want from the horror genre. So for you, for Simon, for Samara, for the whole crew, thank you so much for being so bold and daring and putting this little movie together and showing people what's possible with just a few $1 million and an amazing script, vision, and actors. So
Oh,
thank you
thank
so
you
much,
so
EL.
much. Thank you.
In the lectures, fanboys, professional artists, and professors. Maybe a nerd who's just like you, talking about the things that you like too. So I invite you to the NOC. In full color, you see me. The hard knock life. Comics, movies, and TV. Yeah. Pop culture with a different perspective. Watch it on your screen, hit play, so check this.